Hey everybody, this is going to be the second part of my video about my cancer experience. I think where I left off the last time, judging by where I wrote down, was starting genetic counseling, which was 3 visits that were probably some of the easiest visits that I did. This was before meeting the oncologist and after meeting the breast surgeon. The first visit was to explain what the situation was and how it worked and what was going on. The second visit was doing the actual test, and the genetic counseling consisted of, I don't even remember if I had a spit in a tube, which is what you do with the home tests, but this was cheek swabs and stuff like that. And then the third visit, which was 2 or 3 weeks later, was where she broke down the results. And the results in the mail, and then she also went over them with me. So, in the third visit, like I said, she broke down all the results and what they meant. I was diagnosed at that point with the BRCA1, which is the BRCA1 mutation, which BRCA is either 1 or 2, and that is primarily the breast and ovarian cancer gene. That's the biggest one you hear about. And my particular mutation in that gene was that large sequences of the gene were missing. It just gone. Just like, CABAG, blank, 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 BAGA, I had a secondary mutation, which was in the ATM gene, which is apparently another fairly common one in breast cancer patients. But the sections of code, for lack of a better word, in the DNA sequence was misspelled. So if it was supposed to be BACD, I don't know if those are the right gene sequence, but you get what I mean. It would be ABCD. So it was really interesting the way it was broken down and explained to me. And then she went over occurrence and reoccurrence stats, the likelihood of other related cancers, because both of these cancers have marginal increase later in life of pancreatic cancer, as well as the BRCA gene being highly related to ovarian cancer. After these results were out, I met with the oncologist who used this information to base what my treatment plan would be from there on. So we knew that I'd be having the double mastectomy, as discussed with the breast surgeon. But taking into account my genetic status, my family history, the fact that my cancer was estrogen and progesterone positive, which means that those hormones, which are intrinsically tied to being female, affected my cancer and the rate of its growth and stuff like that, that I would, in addition to double mastectomy, be having a full hysterectomy and oophorectomy, which is the removal of your ovaries. I would have 16 chemo treatments total. They would be 4 biweekly treatments of what's considered red devil chemo, which is the colloquial name for adriamycin or doxorubicin. Adriamycin is the trade name, and the doxorubicin is the generic name. And then, so it's a mixture of the adriamycin and Cytoxan, actually. And that's a very caustic dramatic, powerful chemo, which is why they were bi-weekly, as in every 2 weeks, not twice a week. And then I would have 12 weekly treatments of Taxol and Paraplatin. I was very lucky as far as I know some people who've been through chemo that have, multiple treatments in a week. Mine were just once a week or once every 2 weeks. Also in December, I met the last person in my care team, and this was someone that was suggested to me by my breast surgeon because they've worked with him before, but he was not actually a part of the cancer center, and that was my plastic surgeon. This was one of the hardest visits that I had to do because I'm a bigger person, as you can see. And all of the other previous breast exams, I had to undress, I had to be scanned and everything else. But this was the only one that actually forced me up to a wall, partially naked, and full-bodied pictures taken chest up pictures taken of me so they could have before and after pictures. Also that December, things with my mom she's my mom, and so I wasn't terribly upset when she decided that this was the year that she was going to go back to New York for Christmas, which was fine. My sister had a baby, and, he was 2, I think, at the time, but she had gotten to spend a lot of Christmases with my daughter. She hadn't really been able to spend any time at Christmas with my nephew. So, and my surgery wasn't scheduled until February 2nd. So, she, we didn't think anything of her going to New York for Christmas. I tried not to focus on the fact that February 2nd was the same day I broke my femur back when I was 20. And then an incident in 2019 confirmed February is not my month. I am not looking forward to February of 2020. The trip, however, was not a good one for my mom. She wound up being ill on Christmas Day, and then as she was driving with my sister, fortunately my sister was driving, not my mom, but as my sister was driving from New York to Virginia with my mom in the car, they were in Maryland, and my mom started having seizures in the car. Apparently at some point she developed a head bleed. We're relatively sure it did not happen while she was in Memphis and then flying up to New York, because the flight would have made the bleed happen much sooner. But she can't remember any head trauma while she was in New York either. But she and my sister were in the car on their way to see family in Virginia, and this happened. Fortunately, my family in Virginia this happened in Maryland, but my family in Virginia were close enough that they were able to go there and help my sister. But it became a very stressful time of, do you need me to go there? And that kind of thing. Which it was just, my family there told me not to worry about it, that they would take care of everything. But my mom would be staying in New York for quite a while longer once she was released from the Maryland hospital. She underwent surgery. They fixed the bleed. She had a drain. It wound up being a very small surgical spot, which was great. It was a relatively low-key recovery time for her. But it all leads back up through February when I had my surgery. She was ready to, she needed to be able to travel back. So they were at the hospital in Maryland. She was there for a week. She had surgery to fix her bleed. She wound up in New York for another month and a half until she was well enough to travel back to Tennessee. During that time, I kept going back and forth to her apartment. I kept up with all the mail, paid all her bills, and it was another exciting time to add to the list of things that were going on in my life at this time. Because my mother-in-law was still in the house with us, so that's, stressful. In the meantime, the Xanax I had asked my primary care physician for to help with the stress of the diagnosis, surgery, etc., really became my friend. But not nearly as much as you think it would. February 2nd was the day of my surgery, as I said before. I had to go to, before I went to the hospital, I had to go to my breast center where they injected dye to help them identify the lymph nodes that were going to be removed. The dye includes a tracer that marks the lymph nodes for easier removal. Apparently, I was not awake for this issue, but apparently my surgery had taken longer than expected. My husband and my aunt waited for me to come out of surgery, which was really nice. But the surgery was completed successfully. And my breast surgeon completed his portion, and then my plastic surgeon came in and put in what they called tissue expanders. And a tissue expander is kind of a pre-implant. It's a little bit harder. It's got an area on it where they can inject fluid in, and these expand, obviously, hence the name expander, to help the tissue expand, again, obviously, make your body ready for the implants. However, I was going to be having chemo first, so I was going to be friends with these expanders for a long time. And then he closed up the surgical sites over them, which he did a great job with that. My scars healed beautifully. Unfortunately, they didn't stay that way, but that comes later. One of the things that people don't really talk to you about during this process, or at least none of my doctors did, is that this is an amputation. As much as having a limb amputated, you are having a large piece of your body taken away from you, surgically, obviously. The other thing that is good to talk to your surgeons about that neither my breast surgeon or my plastic surgeon gave me an option for was whether this surgery was going to be nipple sparing or not. So I was in, and it wasn't ever anything that was talked about. So I got a surprise when my bandages were taken off, because it was just something that I never thought about. Came out of this surgery looking like a Barbie doll. And a lot of these things were not anything that occurred to me really until I was in groups with other women who'd been through the surgery, and seeing that some of them had been given the option to keep their nipples, and learning that there's nipple tattoos and fake nipples, and that they can grow new nipples for you using skin and grafting, and it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this that really, it blew my mind how much I didn't know. I wasn't prepared for how much my femininity would be affected by the loss of my breasts. I mean, I knew it would happen. I knew I would probably feel something. But it was a really strange experience to be flatter than I'd been in, I don't know, since I was 14. The way I coped with this, of course, is my way of coping with everything. So I tried to be grateful that I was still here, that the cancer was gone, and dork humor, because that's how I cope with everything. So things like the memes I shared in my last video, and that I'll be interspersing throughout all of these, like, of course they're fake. My real ones tried to kill me. And I tell you a joke so funny you'd laugh your tits off. But you heard that one already. I spent 23 hours in the hospital. My husband very sweetly stayed with me. And then he was home with me for the first few days. My surgery was on a Thursday, so he was home with me Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then by the time Monday came around, he returned to work. But by then, I was pretty functional. I wasn't really taking the pain meds. I was managing everything with Advil. My aunt, who, as I've mentioned, is like a mom to me, had agreed to take my daughter for the first 2 weeks that I was going to be out to help ease the bending and lifting, because I could not lift more than 5 pounds or 10 pounds, and I wasn't supposed to bend over because it would mess up my body. I don't remember exactly why, but that's why. So, and I was absolutely grateful for all of that, especially with my mom being out of town and everything that was going on with my mom. And I know, especially, again, being around people who've been through this surgery from all different walks of life, that I had a great deal more help than other people. And I appreciate the people in my life. What none of us counted on was this was the year that, even with a flu shot, my aunt would get both the flu and strep at the same time. And it sucked for her. But it also sucked for me, because my daughter came home after like half a week. My mother-in-law also got sick during this time, and she was still in her house, and she fell while she was in her house. Of course, I couldn't bend, I couldn't lift, I couldn't do anything. So we had to call for a lift assist from the fire department, which was really an interesting situation, because in my job I worked with local EMS systems, because my boss at the time was the medical director for most of our EMS systems. And obviously my mother-in-law weighed more than 10 pounds. She decided, though, she would not go to the emergency room that night. Now, I thought she should have, because she was ill and she'd fallen and she couldn't get off the floor. She had, after they had gotten her up and gotten her back to the couch, she got herself into bed, and later that same night she called me to help her adjust in the bed, despite the fact that I was not supposed to be lifting or bending or any of these things. And I understand that she couldn't help it. She was ill. She wasn't thinking. She needed to move. The following day, after my mother-in-law's fall, my mom and my sister were coming back into town. My mom was healthy enough to return, and my sister was coming to help her to readjust to her apartment and stuff like that. And my mother-in-law asked if she was still feeling ill, if my husband could bring her to the emergency room on Sunday. I volunteered my husband at that moment to bring her then. And it was a good thing we did, because she really probably should have gone in the ambulance on Friday night. She wound up being in the hospital for like 2 weeks with a lung infection. She wound up being in a rehab and then going to an assisted living. Then My mom and sister came back into my house, and they were super uncomfortable with my surgery, which was really interesting because you're going to find that people in your life don't really know how to deal with this. Especially when you have super repressed people in your family who don't like to talk about body parts and stuff like that anyway. But about the fifth or sixth time my mom had told me about the scar on her head, which I understand it was a brain bleed. It was terribly scary for her. It was major surgery. It was a terrible experience for her. But like I said, the fifth or sixth time in less than an hour that she was telling me about her scars, I offered to show her mine. She did not appreciate it. And that became an ongoing thing. She kind of always knew when she was pushing the envelope with me, because I would offer to show her, my scars or my drains. Because after you have the breast surgery, you're left with these drains that drain all the fluid out of the surgical sites. And they give you instructions on how to clean them and how to handle them. And it's not fun, but you get used to it. It just becomes part of your daily life, and you move on with it. But the drains and my scars were pretty gruesome after about a weekend. And then these few weeks, the next few weeks after that were kind of a blur. My mother-in-law would send lists of things that she wanted from the house for him to bring to her at the nursing home. And and then I was going and visiting my mother and bringing my daughter back and forth to school, and it was a lot. March 9th was my next surgical appointment, and that was the day that my portacath was put in. It's a super minor procedure. It's just a small device that they put under your skin so they can inject, and there's a feed off of it that goes directly into a vein so they can deliver your medications for the chemo right into your veins. My aunt made my mother go with us to support me, because I was going to be under anesthetic, so I couldn't drive. So my aunt was going to drive me because my mom couldn't. Well, my mom wouldn't. And this would be the only visit my mom ever made to the cancer center throughout all of my visits. And I might still have a little bit of bitterness about that. Like I said, it's a small medical appliance that's installed underneath your skin, and it connects the port to a vein, and that's ideally where they'll draw all your labs from, where all your chemo will go, and it saves your actual physical veins in your arms, especially with the adriamycin, which is, as I said earlier, very caustic. But this video has gotten long enough. I've been very rambly. I'm really sorry. It's a little shorter than last time, which is good. And then I'm going to end it here and start the next one with what the process of chemo was actually like. Thank you for putting up with these. These are great therapy for me. I don't know what they are for you. I apologize for my terrible camera work, because I have yet to buy something stabilizing, and I'm not good at this yet. And that's it. Thank you so much.